For more, we can speak to Kawa Hassan, a non-resident fellow at the Middle East and North Africa program at the Stimson Center. Thank you for speaking to Paris Direct. A lot of waiting as to how major regional players are going to react to this week of escalation. What are the calculations that Iran's supreme leader needs to be making?
Thank you. So Iran is indeed in a strategic bind. Iran is facing probably its most consequential strategic dilemma since the establishment of the Islamic Republic, for the simple reason that they have to react, but what kind of reaction and how and when, of course, that is the dilemma for the Iranian leadership, for the supreme leader. If they respond too strongly and in a way that that invites a massive Israeli, but also maybe Western U.S. reaction, that could be devastating for the regime. And if they don't, or if they respond lightly, then that will further weaken the credibility of the Iranian regime in the region, particularly among the constituencies of the so-called axis of resistance, because the credibility of Iran and the Islamic Republic has really taken a big hit. And Israel literally, once again, has called Iran's bluff. So how they would react, that is really difficult to predict. So all eyes on Tehran, in the coming hours, days, and weeks.
Yeah, and how much pressure domestically to react? Iran's head of the judiciary saying, we have a right under international law to retaliate. How common is that sentiment in Iran?
Well, I think among the core constituencies of the regime, in the regime itself, but also the popular base of the regime, I think definitely there are calls for a harsh response, particularly from the side of the hardliners. I'm not sure whether that sentiment is shared throughout the society, because as we know, 2 years ago there were mass protests against the regime, which was suppressed. So the Iranian society, by and large, is really more concerned with the economic hardship in the country, lack of political freedom. So most probably within the hardliners, there are increasing calls for response. But I'm not sure even there are calls for response from the more moderate reformist factions within the regime, because they know that the consequences could be devastating for the regime.
And what about Iran's proxies? How do we expect them to react? Do you think we'll see something from the Houthis, sustained rocket attacks, or from Hamas? I mean, what are the possibilities here? When the supreme leader said that there must be resistance, continued resistance, didn't necessarily say it would come on from Iran directly.
Right. So we should definitely expect retaliation from the Houthis for sure. And also probably from some Iraqi factions, proxies of Iran. As for Hamas, I'm not sure. They still have some capacities, but whether they really have a capacity to again attack Israel, in a more hard, massive way, that is doubted. But I think after the decapitation, if you like, of Hezbollah leadership, and infiltration and disruption of its communication system. These proxies can attack definitely Israel, but I'm not sure to what extent they will be effective in, posing existential threat to the state of Israel. So definitely there will be continuous attacks, but how effective, that remains to be seen. And I doubt that Iran itself will really, again, engage in a direct war with Israel once again, because, as I said, the consequences for the regime could be catastrophic.
Yeah, and the way you put it, the decapitation of Hezbollah's sort of central core there. Give us an idea. 2 more senior members killed, Israel saying. What's left of that high-ranking command in Hezbollah?
That's a good question. What's left? We still have some, senior leaders like Hashem Safieddin, like Naim Qassem, right? So the deputy of Nasrallah, and Hashem Safieddin, the head of the Executive Council, there are still some, senior leaders around, but I think they have, literally, I think decapitation is the best word to describe the impact of the Israeli, assassination of Nasrallah and other leaders. Even as your reporter from Beirut said, even last night they killed two more, military senior leaders. They still have, senior leaders around, but that's not the issue. I think, with time there will be a new generation coming up and take leadership, and it will take time for Hezbollah to reconstruct, reorganize itself. But I doubt it will be, the Hezbollah of Nasrallah, right, from the 90s and 2000s until now. I mean, he was the one who really reorganized Hezbollah after the assassination of his predecessor, Musawi, with the help of Iran, of course. And it was a different regional context, which helped him to, consolidate Hezbollah as the most proxy / partner of Iran in Middle East. I doubt they will be able to, to resurrect that Hezbollah. So most probably we may see a new Hezbollah. How that will look like, that we have to wait and see.
We're still waiting to see how Israel responds also, whether there will be this incursion into Lebanon, whether there won't be. But the statements we've heard coming from Israeli officials, Israeli military, the prime minister himself, discussing the long arm of Israel and suggesting no one was beyond its reach. The supreme leader of Iran ushered a way to a secure location with heightened security. Are there feelings that Israel might be able to do something else like what it did with Nasrallah in regards to the supreme leader, or is that just unfounded fears?
Right. So, right after October 7th, I wrote, a commentary in which I said basically what Hamas did and the ensuing Israeli reaction is what I call the end of red line politics. So we used to have red lines before October 7th, in the region between Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Iran, Israel and Hamas. But actually, those red lines, by and large, have been eliminated, if you like. So the fact that Israel has decided to kill Nasrallah and continue killing top leadership of Hezbollah, but also some key military commanders of Iran, and even attacking the Iranian consulate earlier this year, clearly tells us that the old status quo, the old rules of engagement of red lines is no longer there. So nothing could be ruled out from the Israeli side.
Just to cut you off on that point, sorry to interrupt, in a world where there are no more red lines, is there still a place for diplomacy?
There are always space for diplomacy, and the fact that Iran doesn't want a regional war is actually it's a positive development. U.S., even though they unconditionally support Israel, they don't want a regional war. Regional countries, they don't want a regional war. So there is still space for diplomacy. But what is needed is a political vision and political will, particularly from the side of the U.S. and other powers, also, China, others, and regional countries, really to put pressure. First, they should put pressure on Israel to reach a ceasefire with Hamas deal and hostages being released. Because at the end of the day, the past 3-4 days, we have been all consumed by the impact of the assassination of Nasrallah, and rightly so. But the root cause of the problem in the Middle East is the Palestinian issue. As long as that is not resolved, violence only breeds violence. So at the end of the day, what is needed, there is always a space for diplomacy. And as we speak, there might be all kind of negotiations behind the scenes, which is a good, which is a good sign. But at the end of the day, what is needed for the region is a settlement, if not an agreement where Palestinians get justice and statehood, and Israelis get the security they want to. So that is at the end of the day, what I think, what all diplomatic, all powers, regional, international, should work towards.
Kawa, thank you very much for your time. Kawa Hassan joining us from Brussels. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.